Hey guys, this is Vanessa. My podcast is Life Paranormal with me. Listen as I serve you all things spirit, paranormal, and unexplained. Join me every other Saturday as my guest host and I recount our own experiences that will perplex and utterly terrify you. Life Paranormal with me is available on all major platforms such as Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. Join the Lifer fam by following me on Twitter at VLifeParanormal. Follow, like, subscribe, and hit that notification button so you can always catch a ride on the spooky vibe.
This episode is brought to you by the Slash and Cast Podcast Network. Learn more at slashandcast.net.
My daughter died because some man couldn't understand the word no. Claire didn't get the protection that one would have expected. You don't expect to be burying your own child or going to their funeral. That's not the order of things. A quote by Clare Wood's dad, Michael Brown. Welcome to Reverie True Crime. I'm your host, Paige. A lot of what we will learn about Claire does come from Michael's own words. He has been the one to tell the world about who his daughter was as a person. Therefore, most information about Claire are things that her dad has passionately said about her. This is part 1 of a small series I'm doing about women in Nottingham, England. Claire's father worked so hard to make changes so other women and men could feel safer. In the last part of this series, I'll get into Claire's law, as well as other laws and policies that are in place in Nottingham, England, and also how Claire's law has changed other countries. One quick update is that I'm going to be working on wrapping up the Amanda Pierce series with her sister Kimberly. It's been hard for her to relive those events, and I want her to be okay, and we can work on it on her time, when she's feeling up to it. I know everyone else also understands and cares about her well-being and wants her to take this at her own pace as well, so thank you all for being so understanding. I told her even if we didn't finish it that it was okay. I can do a small bonus episode on where things stand now or something along those lines. I just wanted you all to know that when we work with families, it can be overwhelming for them to go through all of these horrible things all over again. We want to give them their space and let them work with us when they feel up to it. I also told her that you all totally understand that as well, and that we are all here whenever she's ready. With that being said, let's get into the story of Clare Wood. Claire had always been a free-spirited person. She never caused problems, and to describe her in words taken from the Scarecrow and the Wizard of Oz, personally, I'd say she was brave as a blizzard, gentle as a lizard, and clever as a gizzard. She had a fantastic sense of humor to boot. Claire was always told to never be a follower of a crowd, to be her own person, and that she could do and be anything. Michael, a former prison officer, married Claire's mom, Sheila, and adopted Claire, who was 15 at the time, and her brother Adam. At 16 years old, Claire quit going to school and decided to work in a clothing factory. When she turned 18, she decided to leave the nest. On the weekends, you could find her in Manchester, where she fell in love with not only the nightlife, but a man named Larry. The two eventually wed and had a little girl in 1999, who is now 22 years old. When they had the baby and Michael became a grandfather, he was over the moon, and that little girl lit up his life. Eventually, at 31 years old, Clare was said to be increasingly feeling agitated a lot, and the marriage ended. Clare decided to let Larry keep their daughter, but she would visit her baby girl all of the time. However, Michael was a little disheartened, even though he said that Larry really was the ideal son-in-law. Clare and Adam's mom, and Michael's love, Sheila, passed away in February of 2005 from cancer, which is devastating. But after what happened to Clare, Michael was glad that Sheila was not there to go through and endure all of the torment and sorrow that it would have caused her to feel. When Clare and Larry's marriage ended, Clare moved away from Manchester to Carlisle, but that did not last long, as she wanted to go back to Manchester to live closer to her daughter. One thing that made her happy was that her ex-husband had a beautiful garden for their little girl. In 2007, Clare started using dating sites and social media to find a good man. She said she was, quote, looking for a relatively sane man in my area. Sadly, that's not at all what she got. She met George Appleton, who worked on a fairground at times, and he was getting unemployment benefits. She was happy and thought that he was a great guy, though he had dark secrets that she knew nothing about. Clare went to her dad, Michael, and she was so happy that she was talking to a man that she was so fond of. She said she had met the love of her life, and Michael was so excited, until the day he met George. One day, Clare and George showed up at Michael's house, and he didn't like this guy from the moment he laid eyes on him. Michael didn't know, but the two had just visited Clare's brother before going to her dad's. Michael's son asked what he thought of this new guy, and they both had the exact same feelings. Neither of them liked George. There was something about him, and they didn't want anything at all to do with him. Michael discovered that this George Appleton character had spent some time in prison, which made him really inquisitive. He wanted to know who this man really was that was seeing his daughter, who Michael was very protective of. Clare told her dad it was no big deal, it was just a few motoring offenses. Due to Michael's former job as a prison officer, he was not allowed to be seen with ex-cons. He had to tell his daughter not to bring George back to his home again. However, Michael would still go to Clare's house, and they would have wonderful visits together frequently. What was not known at this time would be revealed later. Motoring offenses were not the only reasons that he was locked up. Early 2008, Clare dropped a bomb on everyone. She was making arrangements to marry and spend her life with George. However, in October of 2008, Clare discovered that George had been texting other women and was having affairs with at least 4 women that he met online. As a result of finding this out, she ended their relationship. Well, her dad was very pleased when he found out the news that she had gotten rid of George Appleton. Her dad thought that this was her wake-up call. On October 7th, it had been 5 days since Clare told George she no longer wanted to be in a relationship with him, and George was enraged. He told Clare that he was going to burn down her home, smash out all the windows. He said that he would stab her, he threatened her with an iron, and verbally abused her. Clare went to the police about this, and all they did was escort her home. Okay, that's a nice gesture, but that's not enough. They didn't do anything to George. On Christmas, Clare was visiting her dad, and she told him that George Appleton was being a total pest. But she didn't say exactly what he had been doing to cause her so much trouble. Her dad told her just to get her things together and move back home. Unknowingly, this would be the last time that he would see his precious daughter. Around this time, Clare had communicated with the Greater Manchester Police countless times, telling them that George Appleton had threatened to kill her, he had sexually assaulted her, harassed her constantly, and had brought about criminal damage. Clare was so terrified of George that she had a panic alarm installed in her house after she said that he raped her. 1 week before the extremely tragic, vicious incident, George was arrested for busting down Clare's front door. Anytime George was arrested, he was able to go free shortly after. She could not get away from him no matter how hard she tried. How many times does one need to beg the police for help before they are taken seriously and something gets done about it? She even asked the police 11 days before her imminent death if he had a history of violence, but they would not disclose that information. The failure of some police departments is so upsetting. I think we're all exhausted from hearing about how often police, detectives, and others involved often drop the ball or possibly don't care enough to do their jobs properly. Either way, this would all lead to Clare's demise. On February 5th, 2009, Michael's phone rang, and on the other end of the line was Clare's ex-husband, Larry. He told Michael he oddly had not heard from Clare. Michael sent his daughter a text and he didn't get an answer back. Larry kept wondering why he hadn't heard from her. This was not at all normal. So he drove to Clare's house, and what he saw was something he never could have imagined. Larry discovered Clare's charred body. Michael was getting off work at Leeds prison when his phone rang. It was a call that no one ever wants to receive. It was a police sergeant who said, "I'm sorry, we found your daughter's body." The word crime scene was mentioned, and when Michael heard those words, there was no doubt in his mind who did this to his daughter. Clare had been beaten, raped, strangled on her bed, and George set her and the home on fire. It was so bad that a cherry picker, known as the Jaws of Life here in the States, had to be used to remove her. She had been deceased for 3 days. Clare had begged for help over and over from the police, but she was not protected, and due to that, a father had to bury his daughter. Michael said, quote, "She was the most kind, gentle, generous person you could ever wish to meet. He has stolen the most precious thing of all, a mother to my granddaughter." Clare's daughter was only 10 years old at the time of her mother's death. A little girl now being forced to grow up in this world without her mother. In another interview, Michael stated, quote, "I thought it was an absolute disgrace that my daughter could not be told about her partner's past. It then choked me to my core to learn that somewhere between 100 and 120 girls every year die in the same way as my daughter. For every one of those victims, there are at least 2 people, a mother and a father, who are suffering. And that is just for starters. The death is just the start, like a stone going into a pond. The suffering goes on and on." The IPCC, which is the Independent Police Complaints Commission, said individual and systemic letdowns by the Greater Manchester Police failed Clare Wood. Michael said, quote, "If I had the information I have now, back then, I would have marched her straight home. The last moments of my daughter's life were her kicking and screaming, trying to get away from Appleton." The police began searching everywhere for George Appleton. 6 days into the manhunt, he was found. However, he was not found alive. George had hanged himself in an abandoned bar. More brutal deaths took place while Michael was campaigning for a new law to be in place called Clare's Law. He believed his daughter's terrible passing may not have transpired at all if she had known about George's violent history against women. In 2002, George had been in jail for 3 years because he harassed another female. George was also in jail for 6 months just 1 year prior because he violated a restraining order. Clare's dad was not aware of this information until it was too late. It is important to note that George Appleton was known for seeking out women on Facebook, MySpace, dating websites such as Plenty of Fish, and Informed Consent. Officers even cautioned users of these websites that he posed a dangerous threat. He was an online hunter of women. Some sources say that he and Clare met through Facebook. Other sources say that they met on a dating website. His online aliases were Lil Georgie Porgy and Red Fred. His listed activities on Facebook were Wouldn't You Like to Know? And his interests looked pretty normal with things like music, computers, DJing, and films. Over dozens of females went to the police and told them that George was very suspicious acting when they were just chatting online, even more so for the ones who met him in person. He earned himself the nickname the Facebook Fugitive. A close source to the investigation of George Appleton stated, quote, "He was behaving in a predatory way and was contacting people up until last week. People have been telling us the alarming things that he was saying." End quote. So George was preying on women the week he murdered Clare. The dangers of social media will be something I will discuss further in a future episode. Meeting people online and eventually becoming acquainted with them in person, with a friend or family member present, of course, can be a wonderful experience, and we know not all people have bad intentions. I mean, I met my fiancé online. However, there's also a dark and menacing side of meeting some people online who are not at all who they portray themselves to be. They play a character on the internet to lure women and or men, and that is something that needs to be spoken about. The predators that hide behind a screen professing to be these incredibly nice people, and they do a damn good job at it. I absolutely will do an episode on social media crimes and predators sometime soon. So this is essentially what George would do. He would put on an act and make women so smitten, and then he would utterly make their lives a living nightmare. In 2019, Michael released a written letter by Clare that he found while he was gathering her possessions. It was to George, and she wrote, quote, "There's no easy way to say this, but I don't want to be with you. Too much has happened. I'm so unhappy. I'm at the stage where I don't even like you touching me. and that feeling is never gonna go. You still scare me, and I can't be with someone I'm frightened of. Don't contact me. That's the way it needs to be. I need to get on with my life. If you have any feeling for me, you will let me do this. Don't use this as an excuse to go off the rails. Bear in mind, you were lucky enough not to go to prison again, and I did give you a chance. I had to do this by letter because you just won't listen to me at all. I have told you before how I feel, and you have just chosen to ignore it, hoping it will go away. Well, it hasn't. Each day I feel worse. I have to consider my daughter also, and after all you've done, I can't have you back. It's not fair on her, and she knows I would never be happy with you. She can never trust you either. Take care, I mean it, Claire. Unfortunately, I must inform those that may not know the sad news. Claire's dad, Michael, passed away in July of 2020. His family says that he had a short illness, and he was in a hospital at Sheffield when he passed. I can say with absolute confidence that while he was alive, he fought so hard for his daughter, who will always be his little girl. He made amazing things happen. I will tell you all about Clare's Law after I go through the next few episodes because since Clare's Law was not fully put into effect in England and Wales until 2014, then eventually down the line, Clare's Law, or versions of it, were put into effect in the United Kingdom as well as in Australia and Canada. More women died by the hands of their partners who were domestic abusers, and their stories also should be told. Then I can explain what Clare's Law is and how it is helping men and women who are in abusive and dangerous relationships. It's officially identified as the Domestic Violence Disclosure Scheme, but I'll explain all of that soon. So stay tuned for the stories of Casey Brittle, Kelly Ann Bates, Denise Skilbeck, and Rosie Derbyshire. These are just a few of the people who lost their lives, and unfortunately, Rosie lost her life because even under Clare's Law, the police didn't respond to her soon enough. I'll go into all of that in the upcoming episodes. Thank you so much for listening. If you or someone you know are in a domestic violence situation, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, controlling behavior, financial abuse, and/or verbal abuse, among many other things, please look at the information in the show notes, and that will provide you with phone numbers that you can call. And I know there are some that will not even show up on your phone bill, and I will have those in the show notes as well. Please, until next time, stay safe and take care.